To understand how we consciously create, we can take a look at two very practical examples. Examples that show that our entire reality is created by our consciousness and that fundamentally we are connected with everything in this universe. We are connected to each other, the planet, the animal kingdom, the environment, and every other physical thing in existence. For the first example, let's take a look at some of the work published by Cleve Baxter in the book The Secret Life of Plants. To give you some background, Cleve's intention was to determine if there truly was a conscious connection behind all living things. If found to be true, he wanted to further discover if the consciousness of one living thing could affect the consciousness of another. This is what he found.
During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results.
The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
The results of this experiment clearly show us that there truly is a conscious connection between all elements of nature. So much so that even when one small part of nature is affected, it ripples its effect onto nature as a whole. When we look at the world today, we all know that we consistently pollute the air, the water, and the environment quite intensely with toxic waste. Applying the understanding we gained from the experiment, think now of how our actions are affecting the nature of the entire planet. Every single thing on the planet is affected by every single one of our actions. To take things even further, Baxter performed a subsequent experiment, this one aimed at determining whether the consciousness of humans is connected to all other living things as well.
I decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Dracaena cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all, and in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of tracing, edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of the wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. Now, I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
From this we can understand very clearly that both human intention and consciousness are inherently connected to all living things. We in fact are connected consciously to everything on this planet and in our universe. This is because everything is made up of vibrating matter, all connected and made up of one consciousness. We need to explore this carefully because most of us are familiar with matter simply being known as a solid object. But when we observe matter down to its tiniest forms, we see that it is nothing more than consistently vibrating energy. There is no solidity and matter at all.
It's really only an assumption that the planet and all of the objects on the planet are solid. I mean, when you look deep enough at the quantum level, you can see that there actually is no solidity. There is instead vibrating energy. And this vibrating energy, until the moment we define it, is nothing but pure potentiality.
As mentioned earlier, everything is made up of infinite potentiality, and the moment consciousness decides to create from that, creation takes place. The findings of physicist Thomas Young in his famous double-slit experiment helps to show this, and while doing so sheds light on the quantum field and how our entire reality operates.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double-slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter, through. we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched.
So what does this tell us about our reality? It tells us that the moment there is consciousness viewing and defining how things should act, the infinite potentials act in that manner. The electron acted in the way consciousness defined it should act. We see two slits, we have particles. We define that they must pass through the two slits and create two lines on the other side. However, before it is defined, the particle carries out every possibility. It is limitless. Consciousness, the observer, who we truly are, is in control of our entire reality. How we define our world and what plays out is entirely up to us on a collective scale. The world is infinite potential and infinite possibility. Our consciousness can shape it in any way we choose. Since consciousness does in fact create reality, and we have created the reality we have today, it should be obvious that if we were to shift our consciousness as a whole, we would create an entirely new reality. Notice it was stated as a whole, because we experience and create collectively, and collectively we choose to experience a particular world. What is happening across the planet is a shift in consciousness. The consciousness is beginning to realize this experience has been overplayed, outgrown, and archaic. It takes no judgment when looking at the experience. It simply realizes that it's time to change the game to something new.
We're actually shifting our consciousness. And with part of the shifting in consciousness, we're shifting our whole reality. And what else plays out with that part of the shift, is that we actually project a different world, a different reality altogether as a whole. So basically the shift is a collective shift that we're going through.
The change has to happen within each one of us. We understand that we are all connected, and that a small consciousness change in one will result in a conscious change in the whole. As we saw in the previous experiments, the interconnectedness we share as beings on this planet expands throughout the entire universe. This is not a question of theory, but an inherent truth that we all hold inside.
And the thing is to look at it even more in a grander aspect of it. This shift is happening not only for us, it's happening all throughout our universe. And all of it is all lining up to bring us to a different level of experience. Because we are experiencing a contraction and expansion as the source that we are. So as the expansion, what we've done is we've created all these playgrounds. We created all these what we call worlds, and of course we have our world we call the Earth, but we've created all these playgrounds and worlds to experience ourselves in. So right now what we're doing is we're going to another level of realm of experience. But as we're doing that, we're also aligning with who we are. So as the creator, we are now becoming more active in a conscious way of what we're experiencing. So what is the shift really taking form, and what is really happening is that energetically we're changing. And our consciousness is changing, so we're reflecting something totally different.
Currently, we go through life stuck in our thoughts, stuck in our heads, thinking all of the time. Instead, we can be conscious. We can witness the beauty of the planet, the beauty of interaction with others, and the beauty of being aware of what is playing out in our lives. It simply is about allowing the bigger part of who you are to come through. We might wonder how we can uncover who we are and truly change ourselves inside. We may want to jump to the conclusion that if we simply intend to change, then all will happen. But this isn't the case. What keeps this world projecting in this way is simply the fact that in our unconscious state, driven by our ego, we think that this is all that there is. We have forgotten who and what we truly are, and have allowed the mind to become locked in a prison it doesn't know exists. If we truly woke up, truly awakened to who we are and what we have been playing with for all this time, we would not be projecting the planet in the same way. After all, we have the control. We are the ones that define the potential as we observe it. The key is to become aware of this program, to become aware of the ego, recognizing that it is what we operate from, and that you are the one observing it. From here you begin to see that how we operate on a day-to-day basis is a set of programmed auto-responses based on belief systems and concepts of how things are and should be. But there is no real truth to this. You now realize that you have a choice, not choice based on what was defined by the mind, but choice as a true observer and creator. You can now see yourself experiencing and see what the mind is presenting as how you should be, how the world should be, and how everything should work. You can now choose, do I go with the program and repeat the same cycle we have been repeating, or do I go with what I truly feel inside of me, which isn't based on any form of belief or concept previously handed down?
What is really taking form is we're deprogramming ourselves. We're letting go all aspects of what we defined ourselves up to this point in time. We're taking all of that and we start taking all these definitions, all these descriptions of what we represent on the planet, and we're dissolving all of that one by one so that we can actually connect with that essence that we are and create a whole different reality without definitions, because who we truly are is undefinable. We are pure potentiality. There is no definitions. There is no this is who you are and this is not what you're not. It's basically you're just pure potentiality experiencing and playing. But with this density of energy that we've been playing up to this point in time, we've allowed ourselves to be defined by what we call the roles, what we call our place in our culture, place in our religion, place in our different societies, and also on our placement by all the different rules that we've created that defines what it is to be a human on the planet. So we're basically taking all of that and dissolving all of it completely to actually step outside of that. And then when you're a pure potentiality, your experience realm becomes completely wide open. You're no longer limited to the way that we were experiencing it before.
Who we truly are is not defined as anything. It simply is pure potentiality. It is not our culture, the language we speak, the job we have, the color of our skin, or where we live. We have put ourselves into this tiny box saying, "This is all that we are and all that we can experience," and the mind made that real. But now, some of us are starting to poke holes in the box, and these holes are allowing light into the box. And with the light, people are now starting to see the box for what it really is. Just a box that we are stuck inside. Eventually, as more and more of us step out, the entire box illuminates, allowing everyone to see the truth. This is what this shift is all about. This is how we change our reality on the planet, by stepping out of the box, stepping out of being run by the ego. This means letting go of everything we have defined ourselves and the planet as. We cannot simply look at fixing the structure in place or implementing a new one altogether. If we attempt to do those things without first shifting our consciousness, we will still create from the old archaic way of seeing things, from our old understandings of the planet and how we see and define it. This will do nothing but create enslavement all over again, this time just in a slightly different form. We have to go beyond our old understandings and wipe the slate clean. You can never truly bring change so long as you are holding on to everything you have accepted as reality. We have to look back and understand both what we have created and what we have experienced up to this point, and then from that create something totally different, something totally new and totally free. As part of our consciousness shifting, whether we are aware of it or not, or whether the mind likes it or not, we are going to be forced to let go of our old understandings and beliefs about our reality. Everything from our cultural backgrounds, our economic system, our religious beliefs, our education system, and all concepts of who we think we are. Holding on to any of these will only make things more challenging as the shift progresses.
I'll give you an analogy how this works. It's like us right now. What's happening is that we're carrying luggages. And what do these luggages represent? These luggages represents all our belief systems that we have, all our definitions, all what we perceive as our reality and world, which may be our different, not only our definitions of who we are, but all our possessions, all our different attachments that we have to other soul, to other stuff, or to money, or to anything else that we've adhered ourselves to believe that that defines us and that's who we are. That's what's in the luggage. That is what we're carrying. We're carrying all these belief systems, all these structures in these luggages. And not only do we have them in our hands, we have it as a backpack also. Now, what's happening right now with all these energies going on and the things that are speeding up and creating, it's like us standing in water with these luggages. But what's happening as things are speeding up and increasing within ourselves, the water level is going higher and higher and higher. Now we're walking through this water. So what's happening is, as we're moving, the water starts to agitate further and further. But because we are carrying all this luggage, we're walking on the ground. We can't move from there. But as things intensify, the water just keeps going higher and higher. And we can get up to the point where we're here, and now we're actually have to stop and hold our breath as we're moving because it's starting to move up. And the thing is, as long as we're still holding on, we're still on the ground. We're still at the bottom. But if the water just keeps going up, and it does, and that's what we're doing with the shift that's going on, the water just keeps going up, and we purposely done that. We have an option. We either drown or we let go of the luggage and float. By letting go of the luggage, we're now floating. But that's the whole thing. For us to make the shift, we need to let go of all of that. As long as we're holding on to it, we're not going to be able to.
This internal shift in each one of us is going to continue to present itself more and more until we let go of what it is that we're holding on to. Each one of us emanates a frequency that adds to the overall vibration and frequency of the planet. The control mechanism is simply trying to maintain a planetary frequency that keeps us experiencing this reality. Every thought or emotion we have carries with it a frequency. If we feel hate, it has a certain frequency. If we feel love, it has its own frequency. When we feel or make certain thoughts or feelings a part of us, we emanate that frequency. The goal of the controllers is to keep us emanating frequencies in a particular range, one that this way of life, this projection, exists in. If we started to get out of this frequency and changed our overall frequency, the world as it is today would change completely. Everything this control mechanism does is geared towards maintaining this world. Genetically designed foods we eat, vaccines, medications, chemtrails, satellite frequencies, chemicals in our water, and so on. They are all there to keep us locked in this frequency. Not only locked, but also many of the actions we regularly do are a direct result of this frequency. Fighting, anger, and protesting. Feel the way these actions make you feel to do or see them. Does it bring you peace? The more we let go and dissolve the old ways and beliefs, the more we assist in shifting the overall frequency of everyone. We begin to step out of the frequency range being maintained, and the reality before us begins to come down. Remember, we are all connected. A change in each of us results in a change in the entire planet. It is up to each one of us to begin to disempower and become aware of all that we individually and collectively have defined as our reality. It is up to each of us to realize that which is not truly us, and to begin to let go of the power the program has over us. In some cases, it may be challenging to let go of many of the things we define and identify ourselves with. But this is this way for a reason. The control structure has designed it to be this way, not only to maintain the system, but also to offer us the challenge in remembering who we truly are. A great place to start is right here, right now. What has this information brought up in you? Are you angry? Full of judgment? Upset? If so, why are you having these emotions? If you were truly at peace, then none of this would bother you, whether you felt it as true or not. If you discover your reactions were from some sort of idea or definition, maybe a belief system that you identify with, ask yourself, do I really need to continue experiencing these old beliefs? Or can I let them go? These are the types of questions and observations we must make about ourselves as we go through the shift. These are the types of questions and conversations we must share with one another. These will allow us to observe and deprogram all definitions and triggers we have in our own lives. These types of questions are what will lead us to experiencing true peace in a world without limits.